Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. I'm Belinda McCauley. I'm the Executive Director of the Beverly Hills Bar Association, and I am delighted to welcome you today to this webinar that I am very much looking forward to. Your materials for this, we're going to drop those in the chat if you want easy access. Also, the reminder email that came an hour before we started here, that also has a link to all of your CLE materials. We're going to save questions for the end. Please feel free to drop questions in the Q&A section, and we'll be going through those. And at the end, we're leaving time so that we can get to as many of those as we can possibly fit in. I would not be doing my job if I didn't ask you, if you aren't already a BHBA member, please consider joining. You saw our quick video. Our website has all of our membership benefits and options. If you ever have any questions about our membership, our benefits, we have dues fellowships for public interest lawyers, etc. Please feel free to reach out to me directly. You can reach me at ed@bhba.org. And now I have the pleasure of turning things over to our president, Adam Siegler. Adam is an incredibly busy litigator at Greenberg, Traurig, but he also dedicates a tremendous amount of time to doing pro bono work. I know it is very deeply personal and important to him, and that he is very committed to our profession, providing that service. And as somebody who is a lawyer in-house at 501c3s for over a decade, I know how invaluable that assistance from the private sector is when you're in those roles. So 3 of Adam's pro bono clients are with us today, General Counsels of very worthy organizations. And I'm so excited to hear this conversation because these folks are incredibly multi-talented and cover a number of topics that honestly, I hope I don't ever actually have to deal with on a daily basis, but I want to learn more about how they do it. So I'm going to turn this over to Adam, who's going to moderate today's panel.
Thank you, Belinda, and welcome to everybody. Pro bono is something that I'm very passionate about. It's been an important part of my entire legal career, and I know that everybody on this panel and everybody in our audience feels the same way, so welcome. Today we have a rather unique program which focuses on the nonprofits and in particular the special role of the General Counsel for these large and important organizations. We have 3 of my favorite nonprofits here today. We have the Los Angeles LGBT Center, we have U.S. Veterans Initiative, and we have Partners in Health. What I'd like to do is just briefly introduce our panelists. Their resumes, very distinguished resumes, are in the materials, but I just want to mention a little bit about them so you have an idea of how much experience and education and expertise they bring to these important roles. Our first panelist is Lori Silver, who is the General Counsel of Partners in Health. She has an undistinguished record as a graduate of Harvard University and Law School and Stanford University, which she followed by clerking in the United States District Court and followed that by clerking in the Office of the General Counsel at Harvard University. She's also been in the world of general business, where she was General Counsel of Decision Resources Group. So as you can see, this is someone who could work anywhere in any legal field in any organization across the country. And yet here she is at Partners in Health, and we're grateful to have her. What I'd like to do, Lori, is give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about your wonderful organization.
Great, thank you so much, Adam. And thank you to the Beverly Hills Bar Association for hosting this panel. So Partners in Health is based in Boston, Massachusetts. We were founded by Dr. Paul Farmer And we're dedicated to providing high quality, dignified healthcare to some of the poorest patients in the world. We work in 10 different countries. We got our start in Haiti, and that remains our largest area of operations, where we provide healthcare to several million people in the Central Plateau of Haiti. We also work in Rwanda, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. We expanded there during the Ebola crisis. Lesotho, Malawi, and Navajo Nation are just some of the places where we work side by side with the ministries of health to really show what it takes to provide the best healthcare to patients who absolutely deserve it. During the COVID pandemic, we expanded to really, for the first time, working very closely, working in the United States. We are running the contact tracing project for the entire state of Massachusetts, and also providing advisory services to other states, counties, and cities on how to do equitable COVID response and equitable contact tracing. And I'd like to give a little plug to a documentary about our organization that's on Netflix called Bending the Arc. And it's a great story about how our organization was founded and got our start in Haiti, and have really been on the forefront of fighting for global health and equitable access to healthcare for all.
Lori, it's tremendously humbling when I hear of all the wonderful work that you do. And everybody, please watch Bending the Arc. It is a tremendously moving film about how this organization got started and the wonderful things they do. Let me turn to our next panelist, Cameron Faber, who is General Counsel at the Los Angeles LGBT Center. He and I actually have a very similar undergrad and law school career, although he's a lot smarter than I am. He went to UCLA undergrad and then went to Loyola Law School, which is where I went as well. And he worked for Los Angeles and also national law firms before he came to the LGBT Center. So Cameron could, like Lori, work anywhere in the city or the courts or in the business world, and yet he has devoted his life to helping people who really have been discriminated against for many, many years. And Cameron, let me give you the opportunity to tell us about all the wonderful work you've been doing there, I think since 1969, correct?
Yeah, it's really. Hi, everybody. Now, I've been involved with the Los Angeles LGBT Center for over 20 years. I've been here now 10 years, and before that, I was a litigator for 30 years. So I've been practicing law about 40 years now. Which is hard to believe. But anyway, I got my start volunteering for the LGBT Center at a law firm. We represented the center, outside counsel for the center in connection with the dispute over what was then called the California AIDS Ride, which became the ALC AIDS Life Cycle Ride, which many of you have probably heard about. It's 545 miles from San Francisco to LA, which I've done 4 times, I might brag, but every mile. But it's one of our big fundraisers. But let me back up a little bit and just say that the Los Angeles LGBT Center, which we'll just refer to today as the center, is the largest LGBT services organization in the country, if not the world. Certainly in the US, and I'm sure it is in the world as well. We have over 700 employees now. It's doubled since I started. Our budget, I can't even keep track of it. I think it's now currently around $120 million. That, when I say that, that consists of donations, maybe 20%, but most of the money is from federal, state, and local grants. We are involved in all kinds of services, mental health services. We're a federally qualified health center. We have youth services where we bring in runaways and they stay here. It's a shelter in essence. We also have, as I think I mentioned, senior services, just a vast array of things. And a couple of things we've recent years gotten involved in is affordable housing. We're just completing senior affordable housing and youth affordable housing. And so we're very excited about that. So I was fortunate. I don't know if is this just background, Adam, because I could say how I got here, but.
Please do. We're all colleagues here and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, so this is just, if there's any of you out there who are interested in working for a nonprofit like the center, I think the best advice I can give is to volunteer before you really seek employment. I mean, there may be times when you can directly apply, and I encourage that too. But as a lawyer, I think it was very helpful that I volunteered for 10 years. In essence, I was the outside general counsel. I had a litigation practice, and Lori and Daryl, which are the current heads of the center, would call me from time to time. I'd be in the middle of a trial or something. It's like, oh, okay. But anyway, that's what I would say to people is, volunteering is very important. And the only other point I'd say is, as Adam and I both mentioned, we're both litigators. So litigation brings a wealth of knowledge that you can bring to a corporate practice or an in-house position, especially at a nonprofit like this, that really comes in handy here. So I would encourage even you litigators, you can always look to work for nonprofits and maybe go in-house, but we'll talk more later on some other issues.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I want to emphasize throughout our program here, which is that we're speaking to you, our audience and viewers, because you obviously care about pro bono. And one of the important conversations that we need to have is, how can you work with these general counsel to channel your efforts and be useful to these wonderful organizations? So let's keep that topic in mind, Cameron, and we'll return to that periodically as we go through. My third panelist is Carla Ford, the General Counsel of U.S. Vets. I am a veteran, and I've been part of U.S. Vets for 14 years, I think now. And it's a wonderful organization, which I'll let Carla talk about. But I just would note a few things. Like our other two panelists, Carla could work anywhere she wanted. She was an assistant U.S. attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office after graduating from Boston University and then from Georgetown Law School. She also has worked in the for-profit world for a little company called Walmart, doing environmental compliance. She was also the CEO of Georgia's Commission on Equal Opportunity, in addition to her private practice work, both in Los Angeles and in Atlanta. So Carla truly is somebody who has held every kind of important legal job you can have, and we're very pleased to have her at U.S. Vets. So Carla, I'd like to ask you about U.S. Vets and also about the wonderful backdrop to your screen there, because I think it says a lot about you.
Well, it actually does literally say some things about me, things that other people believe about me, and I'm grateful and I'm humble about that. I'm Carla Ford, and I'm the General Counsel for U.S. Vets. Our full name is United States Veterans Initiative, but U.S. Vets is a lot pithier. And what we do is we house homeless veterans. Our slogan is we serve those who've served, and we meet our clients where they are. We have everything from just job counseling and job referral services for the person who needs that, all the way to fully supportive housing, providing social services, rent subsidies, and free housing as well. So we are in 5 states, plus Guam and the District of Columbia. We have 11 sites that are congregate. They have usually 2 or 3 person rooms, but I will tell you, in this time of COVID, we've gone down to single rooms or just 2 to a room. Like everybody, we've had to be quite flexible, and I'm happy to say we've been pretty successful at it. In terms of, I'm wearing this t-shirt today because this is the first day of our executive director's retreat. It is virtual, and that explains the backdrop that I have. These are some of the terms that people think of when they think of me, which, as I say, is quite humbling and pretty pleasing. I recommend that to all of you in your organizations to do that exercise, because it's kind of a lift, to know that people have these positive sorts of things to say. U.S. Vets is a $60 million charity. We have about 500 employees in all of the places I mentioned. We're in the states that we're in is Arizona, Texas, California, Nevada, and Hawaii. We're a social services agency, to be frank. I mean, I've gone from being working with Walmart, which of course is the Fortune 1. Our slogan unofficially was "We sell stuff." Well, at U.S. Vets, we provide services for people, whatever those services are. And as a lawyer, it was quite jarring to realize that it's actually encouraged that you have feelings and that you express them to your coworkers and others. And it's pretty freeing. I have to say, I'm pretty pleased with where I have landed. How did I get here? I had lunch with Darwin Thomas, who was my predecessor. He and I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office at the same time. And we met at a lunch. Actually, it was the council meeting that USC puts on every year. And some months went by and Darwin told me he was looking to retire. And did I know anybody that wanted to succeed him? So that's how it happened. I would say that when it comes to being a general counsel, the relationships are first and foremost and paramount to your success. And just picking up on Cameron's topic of what can you do to become involved with a pro bono, to become involved from a pro bono standpoint with a nonprofit is just pick out the pro bono organization that is of interest to you and call up the general counsel or the CEO and say, hey, this is the expertise that I have. Can I do something to assist you? So it could be as simple as that.
Carla, you do so much. I can endorse every single word that's behind you on the screen. So thank you for all that you do for veterans. Before we jump into the substance of our talk today, I just wanted to ask each of you to tell us a little bit about the Office of the GC. In other words, you've each described a large, multi-million-dollar, sprawling empire of services and real estate. Now tell us who's running the legal part of that, and what's your, you must have very large staff. So tell us about that.
No, that would be a big no. I am in the legal department at US Vets.
Yeah.
How about you, Cam?
Yes, I am the paralegal, the lawyer, and I guess I do have some admin assistance now from the finance department, but I do a lot of it myself. So it's a party of one.
Wow. Lori?
So I came on as the first general counsel for Partners in Health and was the only lawyer for many years. And one of our staff members was going to law school at night and passed the bar and joined my team. So I was able to hire one other attorney due to our rapid COVID expansion during the past year. So I have two other attorneys who report to me, and we can still barely keep our head above water. There's more than enough work for the three of us.
You know, it's amazing to hear how much work you must do, and our audience is now going to hear all the things that you have to cover as a sole or small legal unit there. So let's jump right into the operation of the Office of General Counsel. Let's spend a minute telling us how you manage your volunteers, your outside counsel, and other experts that you have to coordinate to get done all the work that you need to do.
I'll jump in.
Sure.
How do I do it? As needed. I'd like to tell you I have some big strategy that I just sort of plug in what I need and flip a switch to make it work. But essentially, I am catching issues, some that are expected because I've been told we're going to get served, or some that are completely out of the blue because all of a sudden I get a call from a site and they say, we've just been subpoenaed about X. And so you look at the situation, you assess it, you determine what's needed. And if you've got a cadre of resources, and by that, I don't mean people who are necessarily employees that are paid by your agency, but your Rolodex, your virtual Rolodex, people people who are doing the things that you find necessary, and you just pick up the phone and make those connections. And most people even the volunteers are happy to help you. Obviously, the people that you pay are even happier to help you, and it all works out.
Cam, what's your experience? I know Greenberg Traurig does work for your organization in a variety of capacities, but how do you decide when to bring in a big firm, or how do you make those decisions about who does what work for you?
Well, in the pre-COVID world, what's really important, or what's been important to me, is networking. In fact, I've had lunch with you and your colleague Jim Burns on several occasions, for example. But that's what I typically do. I go around and meet law firms. I also cards will be given to me by people in the office if we've had fundraisers or whatever. We'll get volunteer attorneys that say, hey, I want to help. So I have my go-to outside law firms. Occasionally there's areas where I do unfortunately have to pay, but those are very extreme. Fortunately, they may be difficult legal issues or what have you, but I try to build strong relationships with my pro bono counsel. For example, Adam, and then I have another large law firm that will remain nameless. Maybe somebody from that firm is here on this call. And I have a particular point person there, much like I do it with Adam. And I call him and I'll say, both Adam and this gentleman, and I'll ask, I've got this kind of issue. Can you help? Do you have somebody in your law firm who can do that? And that, 9 times out of 10 leads me to somebody in these 3 or 4 large law firms that I use. Occasionally, I have to, pay, but it's very rare. And it's kind of like how do I say it? It's just important to me to find the pro bono. And I even found somebody to appraise some art. We have all this art here at our new building, and we had to get it appraised for our insurance policy. And I was fortunately able to get an appraiser to do that pro bono. So given the nature of our organization, and fortunately nowadays, outside counsel really, they want to help the organization, given all that we do, keeping kids off the streets, helping our seniors, federally qualified health center and the like. It's fairly easy to find pro bono counsel. So anyway, it's a long answer.
No, it's a great answer. Lori, you work in 10 or 11 countries with completely different legal systems. How do you manage that?
Well, I get it. I know when to call outside counsel in the countries where we work, and I try to have outside counsel ready to go if I need help. So I certainly don't know the laws of Haiti, Rwanda, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Malawi, Lesotho, Peru, or Kazakhstan, but I have people to call. And it's especially important to call those people with employment issues, because the employment laws are just so different and counterintuitive from a U.S. perspective. So I always try to reach out when we have a particularly thorny employment issue. And for a while, I was pretending to be a construction attorney in Rwanda, and finally was able to locate an actual construction attorney. So that was a good thing, because it's not good to winging that was not a good thing. And I am completely shameless about calling lawyers who I know in Boston or in other states or cities for assistance when I need help here in the US on really complex issues. And everyone has been fabulous. We really couldn't do the work we do without assistance from outside pro bono counsel. They're invaluable, and I'm just grateful every day for their assistance.
Thank you. And I know that our audience is hearing that and thinking, what else can they do to volunteer? So we'll give some opportunities for that as we move along. Let's talk a little bit about the corporate governance of these nonprofits. I take it they're all 501c3s. And so you probably have a number of formation and governance and reporting obligations. How do you keep track of that, and how do you keep your organization on the right side of the law? Carla, you do a lot of this because you have a bunch of different entities. Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, we have, we're doing a lot of development for our company that is trying to build our own facilities to maintain. And so we're doing that through a strategy of creating an LLC for each project. And that is creating, I'll put it this way. I've learned on the job what that's all about, because the last time I thought about corporations was when I was a second year. So it's been quite an education. And of course, California has so many lovely rules and things that you have to observe. So I've learned a lot about that. And I keep a spreadsheet right now. If it gets much bigger, I'm gonna have to get a database. But that's how I keep track of the deadlines that come up, the reporting that has to happen, the amounts of money that have to be put aside for as a budgetary matter. And then, of course, there's keeping the corporations that are the single member, who is the single member of the LLC, to make regular reports at their annual meeting, typically is when it happens. So it's not terribly hard, but it gets fraught when the entities proliferate. So that's probably the toughest part of managing it.
That makes sense. Cam, I'm guessing that you as the attorney then direct yourself as the paralegal to put together a chart of all these things that you have to follow up on as well.
Yeah, but I also work with somebody in finance. Fortunately, before I got here, there was somebody in the controller who his staff, or he in particular, were responsible for different filings, fictitious business name filings, the statements that needed to be filed, statements of information, as you all know, need to be filed every 2 years with the Secretary of State. So I had a person, he still does that. He runs the forms by me, but I have someone who does that. In recent years, in the last few years, given our construction projects, we've had to create new affiliated companies and file different corporate documents. I typically don't do that from here. I engage outside counsel to help me with those. But I keep track of what we need to do, but I have to rely on outside counsel. A couple of law firms help me with that. But yeah,
Lori, I'm sorry, Cam. You're quite right. It seems like an enormous amount of work for one person, but you're right. You have to reach out and leverage the contacts that you do have. But Lori, let me turn a little bit to the more operational side and the contracting side. Obviously, you're doing business in 10 or 11 countries with different legal systems. How do you manage things like contract review with vendors, real estate operations in foreign countries, protecting your intellectual property? How do you do that across the spectrum of your operations?
Yeah, it's really complicated. The first thing I did when I started was put a contracting policy in place, which tried to clarify when our foreign operations needed to come to me for assistance, when they could do it on their own. I think looking at it from a risk management perspective, what are the issues we really care about, and where I felt I needed to see those contracts, and where was I willing to, take a risk. And so certainly we have some really complex grants and research projects where, we always try to review those very carefully. We have large construction projects going on. We're building a hospital in Sierra Leone currently, and we built a large university in the mountains of Rwanda. And so again, I'll try to engage outside counsel as necessary, but often it's just using your best business judgment and being able to read through a contract and offer common sense advice. So luckily we're able to do that efficiently, but it can be a heavy workload.
Yeah, I can imagine it helps to have that leavening of corporate and other experience before you jump in as GC here, because as Cam said earlier, if you've litigated something, you kind of know where the minefields are, and every experience that you have over the years gives you that judgment and wisdom to know what's important and what can be handled by others. Let me turn to Carla for a second and talk to us a little about labor policies, because you have so many employees that you're working with in 10 or 11 different states. How do you manage that?
Well, we're still only in 5 states.
Oh, 10, 11 facilities.
Yeah, Lori's in all those countries, but I'm just in 5 states, DC and Guam. But that's enough. Well, I'll tell you, just practically speaking, a lot of what I do, and I think that Lori and Cam will agree, there are things that you do that are common sense, and that you evaluate the risk and say, yeah, well, this might be ill-advised, but really, how likely is this that it's going to happen? And so as a lawyer, I know that I work with outside counsel, and before I became an internal lawyer, actually before I became a compliance person at Walmart, I realized that lawyers are extremely conservative. If there's a rule against it, the answer is no. But a business doesn't want to hear no. A business wants to hear, how can we do this? And so my boss at Walmart used to say, instead of saying no, the answer should be yes, but. And so that's the approach that I have with the work I do for US Vets. The business wants to do certain things, and so it's my job to see the risks, weigh them, and determine what do we have to do to guard against them, and and still be able to achieve the objective the business wants. So I would say that with that mindset, it frees me a little bit because it allows you to be more creative as opposed to being law bound and rule bound. And I think that is an inviting thing to me to be a general counsel as opposed to just the lawyer who catches the cases outside counsel. It's a different perspective completely.
Yes, I actually, as a former judge advocate, I can tell you I had exactly the same instruction, which was you don't tell commanders no. What you tell them is, ma'am, this is how I think we can do it legally. And you try to get to the yes if you can.
Yes.
But sometimes the general counsel just has to say, no, we cannot do that. Mm-hmm. And you have to make a stand. Cam, let me ask you a little bit about intellectual property and art. You mentioned you have an art collection. I hadn't even thought of a nonprofit as having a valuable art collection, but apparently you do. Tell us about these other sort of fine arts aspects of nonprofits.
Fine arts aspects. Well, that was a big one. That had to fall within our insurance, and we were fortunate to have a donor, and a lot of our, all these were donated, of course. Fine arts. Well, I was also thinking of intellectual property as well. I don't know if I can say much about fine arts, but more than what I said. But intellectual property, believe it or not, we have copyright issues, trademark issues. So I have a specific law firm I turn to who does that pro bono work for me, and they've been great. You'd be surprised, one would be surprised at the number of intellectual property issues that a nonprofit might have. Everything from when our name had to be registered and our symbol, which is a rainbow colored wreath, that all had to be registered with the U.S. Trademark Office. We recently filed an application to copyright some handbook or handbook instruction materials for a couple of our, or 2 or 3 of our programs here. So those kind of issues come up. And back to the art, that did kind of surprise me. We realize now, we're in a new building. And
if I could just jump in, the one place that that intellectual property issues come up for U.S. vets is at the holiday season. Every year, somebody uses our name to raise money for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And all they have to do is say they're a veteran. They put up a website. They start soliciting money. And as soon as we learn of it, I'm writing them a cease and desist letter, and that usually takes care of it. But people will, use our name and without our permission, and we have to put a stop to that.
Well, that's
absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Cam.
I was going to say, because that's just kind of I have the same kind of issue that comes up. This is an anecdotal, as they say, kind of story. But one time, I had seen this person speak at a National LGBT Bar Association function. I sat in her workshop, and I enjoyed it. Well, a year later, I'm informed from our marketing that this person is using our some of our photos, and so she was very nice. I wrote her a letter and had to, a cease and desist. But of course, it was tame. I knew she didn't know who I was probably, but I had sat in her workshop, and it was kind of like, by the way, and she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We'll stop doing it." So that's right, Carla. I understand exactly what you're saying. So.
Yeah. We had a crazy situation where there was a doctor's office in Georgia that was using our name and actually got some donations for us. And they sent us the checks, like, here, we got these donations that were meant for you, which was lovely. But then, of course, we knew that there was actual evidence of confusion, and we had to, we got our trademark attorney to send them a cease and desist, and we had real ironclad evidence that there was confusion in the marketplace.
Well, that's nice. I wouldn't have thought of that, but we just wanted the donations to come to us.
Well, let's turn from IP to another really important topic these days, and that is privacy rights and regulations. And in particular, to Lori and Carla, your organizations are treating people with health issues and mental health issues. How do you manage this complex Byzantine system of privacy right laws, HIPAA, and in your case, Lori, I assume comparable regulations across the world?
Sure. So it's definitely a challenge. I mean, we have patient data from many different countries, and we treat it with the utmost carefulness. We were trying to be incredibly protective of that patient information and make sure we have strong data use agreements in place, and IRB approvals for our research, and it's anonymized whenever possible. But yeah, it certainly is a challenge, and it's difficult to negotiate all the local rules and regulations related to that international patient data. And in the US, when we started doing the COVID contact tracing, we went from 0 to hiring 1,500 employees in the span of a month in last March. So that raised all kinds of data privacy and security issues for us. We wanted to also make sure that contact tracing information was locked down as possible. So I'm a big fan of working with our IT departments to have technical measures in place that will restrict the data use as much as possible.
Mhm.
Carla, you do
go
the
ahead,
same
Aaron.
thing. No, go ahead.
We do. I would say that the outline that Lori just gave us, thankfully, is not the overlay that I have to deal with, because we're just domestic. Because I know that the international privacy laws are really quite broad and restrictive. In California, restriction and broad are kind of, the same thing, but not quite as awful. But we are aware of our duty to keep private all the information that we get on our clients. And in this time of COVID, the extra overlay is including when people test positive, for example, having to keep that information confidential, yet having to communicate to people at the site that there has been a positive test result and that extra precautions have to be observed and maintained. But I would say that our requirements are not too much different than they have been over the last 5 or 6 years, just because with HIPAA and new privacy rules, and of course, California got even more heightened and restrictive privacy rule last year, or legislation. We're just mindful to keep the standards high and to uphold and enforce them.
Now let's talk about something that always amazes me for nonprofits, and that is claims and litigation. Despite all your best efforts and the fact that you are providing free services to help other people, you're going to get claims both from your own employees and from your own clients, in addition to third-party vendors and other misunderstandings. Let's talk a little bit about risk management and how you manage claims, litigation, and outside counsel. Cam, why don't you tell us a little bit? We'll start with you at the LA side, and then we'll move to Carla and finally to Lori.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how much I really want to say. How do I want to tell you how I really feel? And I'll couch this. We do have some lawsuits right now. I'm not happy about them. It's public knowledge. They're in the record. I don't think anyway, I don't even want to talk about it. So yes, it's discouraging. It's very discouraging when I see these. We have a particular outside counsel who helps us with employment matters that may arise from time to time. With respect to, we also get involved in a lot of HIPAA, because as I mentioned, we're a federally qualified health center. So the Federal Tort Claims Act is now covering us. So we've had a couple where people made a complaint. They haven't done anything formally, but we let them know that, well, if you've got a claim against us, you now have to file this form with the Department of Health and Human Services. So that kind of stops things. So you have where we see the most is in employment related matters. And then if there are some where some of our clients are making claims, nothing's really ever happened with those.
Mm-hmm.
They go off. I mean, once they know they have to get involved with the federal government and file a tort claim act and all that, kind of slows it down. But I work with outside counsel on those few lawsuits that we have. I get involved heavily on discovery. Maybe it's because I was a litigator. So I've done a lot of discovery, a lot of interrogatory responses, document requests, et cetera, et cetera. So I help coordinate all of that. I'm very proactive for an outside counsel on that. I rewrite stuff, I question stuff with my outside counsel. So I'm actively involved in that. So we still have it, but I'm glad it's people like Adam and the outside counsel that have to state all the objections, so I don't have to do it. So anyway, that's it.
We're happy
Well,
to help. Carla, tell us
I would
about
say,
your experience.
Cameron, I feel your pain, but I try not to take it personally, because another thing I learned at Walmart, and I got to say, that's the education, that's the gift that keeps on giving. But one thing that I learned and I keep in mind is that people are simply being who they are. And the people who tend to sue us are being who they are. They are going to sue whoever they were employed by or whoever was trying to help them, because that's who they are. And so with that as the overlay, I figure that my job is to minimize and mitigate. And so to the extent that we can try to, settle pre-filing, we try to do that. We are not always successful with that. And so what I tell my client is, they say, well, can they sue us for that? And I say, they can sue you for absolutely anything. The question is, can you withstand the scrutiny? And so that is why we document everything and we talk about everything. And they call me for advice and I give it as things are moving along, as I tell them, and have you documented that? So that by the time we get to the point of the lawsuit, we're ready. And it's held us in good stead. When I came in, we had quite a little portfolio of litigation, and it's minuscule now. And I like to think that it's because I'm so great. I'm not so great. We just worked it out. But
I can vouch for that. You are great.
Well, thank you. But we worked it out, and now it's to the place where it's manageable. And the notion that people, for example, who are getting free services would sue us, yeah, it's just who they are. And of course, employees, you can never account for that.
Well, before I turn to Lori, what I'd like to do, Lori, is add a little bit more to your part of the question. And that is, I want to talk something a little bit about the unique aspects of the nonprofits, and particularly the multi-jurisdictional nonprofits. So if you could talk to us a little bit about how you manage claims across 10 or 11 countries and how you manage insurance and risk management, I'd be very interested to hear.
Well, I try to avoid them. I think where we all earn our stripes as in-house counsel is if you could see the claim coming down the street and you're embedded enough in the business and trusted enough to be able to jump in and head it off. And that's where we all earn our salary, because I really work really hard with our sites and with our staff to proactively manage any issue that could potentially turn into a claim down the road. And that's been we've had good results with that in avoiding any types of major litigation. But certainly if we do have issues in our local sites, especially the employee issues are really, really challenging. It can be really difficult to terminate staff in the countries where we work. The jurisdictions are very employee friendly. So, we've had situations where we have to go through multiple formal processes at our sites, hearings and appeals of hearings, and then appeals of those appeals in order to move forward with a termination. And that's where local legal advice is really invaluable.
It's amazing how much work it takes to resolve even a single claim. And I always marvel at the fact that some of these claims, if they were allowed to prevail, they can put a serious dent in the charity's activities. So this is a serious threat, and you have to be able to preserve the assets of the nonprofit in order to serve all of the clients that you have to serve. So with that kind of overview here, we've looked at formation and corporate governance. We looked at operations and compliance, claims and litigation. Let's take a moment and reflect, if you would. If you'd like to share with us, each of our panelists, maybe some especially memorable moments. They can be good or bad, educational or humorous, but we'd like to hear from you. And we'd also like to give each of you an opportunity to speak directly to our audience about what it is that the rest of us in the legal world can do to help you as general counsels of nonprofits, I'd like to hear how we can do a better job of supporting you, and I think our audience would as well. So I'll start with Lori, and tell us some memorable moments and how those shape your view and what you need us to do to help you.
Sure. So when I first started at Partners in Health about 5 years ago, I was brought into a project where we were working on building a medical school in Rwanda. And it was located in an area called Butaro, which is in northern Rwanda on the border of Uganda, and very mountainous, beautiful region. And the construction was incredibly challenging. So I spent a lot of time, at the beginning of my work at PIH, handling construction issues and talking about policies that this university had to have in place and how are they going to admit students and run their courses. And it was really exciting to be involved in helping to build this project from scratch. And I did have the opportunity to go to Rwanda, not last summer, but the summer before, and really see it in action. And to be able to meet the students and meet the faculty and see this incredible campus that we built to train doctors and nurses in Africa and in Rwanda, and with the goal of providing, increasing healthcare capacity and providing services to rural communities. It was an incredibly powerful feeling to be able to see all this work come to fruition. And in terms of involvement, certainly I'm sure we all can take whatever help we can get. And, volunteering for our organization, or becoming involved as a donor, or just learning more about our organization and reaching out to see how you can help. We're grateful for that assistance, especially from the legal community. And you all have such great specialized skills that we can benefit from. And I'm always grateful for my pro bono partners.
Thank you. And, it's true that even though we might not know the law in Kazakhstan or Rwanda, but if we can help you with the law in California or Massachusetts, it takes something off your desk so that you can focus on the other things.
Absolutely.
I would hope. Carla, tell us a little bit about your experiences and what it is that we, the rest of the legal world, can do to support what you're trying to do for veterans.
Well, for me, the experience starts with and ends with why we're doing what we're doing, our mission. And people want to be a part of helping us fulfill our mission, we are happy to have your assistance. And it can be, at least from my perspective as the General Counsel, providing your expertise, providing your advice, providing even your volunteer work in ways other than being a lawyer. I mean, because we have volunteer opportunities if you would just like to help advise some of the veterans, for example, or help them navigate going through the VA and trying to get benefits and that sort of thing. But I would say that the thing that impresses me most about working at US Vets is our mission. And when I meet veterans, these are people who went overseas and fought for us and who lost buddies that they fought side by side with. These are people who, if maybe they didn't go overseas, they and their families have sacrificed for us because of the separations they've had to endure. So, and not everybody has PTSD. I think part of our mission too is kind of dispelling that notion that all veterans are somehow broken people who are, unable to participate in society. Your pro bono work with us will help us spread that message that our veterans are our countrymen who have sacrificed in sometimes the ultimate way. So I'm humbled by being able to work for US Vets, and it makes me feel like I'm continuing my public service. I worked at the US Attorney's Office for a total of 16 years. And I feel like I'm kind of continuing that public service working at US Vets. So that's how you can help.
I'm humbled to be able to support the efforts that you provide to veterans. It's a tremendous obligation that we have, and I'm, like you, proud and humbled to be part of it. Cam, tell us a little bit about your perspective And also, again, I want to give you an opportunity to remind our audience how they can help, because everybody should be helping all of these wonderful causes.
Well, I'll just start on the first part, briefly saying, I mean, the things that really thrilled me working for an organization that supports LGBT and straight youth, keeping them off the street, bringing them to our shelter. I'm always encouraged by the people who work here in the youth center with the youth, because I've come across issues and I know it can be difficult because a lot of the young people have really had tough backgrounds. A lot of them are kicked out of their homes. They live on the streets. And so it's hats off, I feel, for our employees who work in that area, because it's such an important area. And so I'm excited to work for an organization where we have that service. Also, I always get thrilled when occasionally I'm able to help and step in to bring in people, new clients through friends of mine. I assist in trying to help them see the right person. That's always a thrill to me as well. So lots of different things that are exciting about the kind of work that we're doing here, and I could go on and on about it. As far as volunteer, there's a couple of things. I'm on the board of the LGBTQ Bar Association here in Los Angeles, and one thing we do is we encourage lawyers to sign up to work for our clinic. We have a legal clinic. There's sometimes some confusion. I represent the center, but we also have the legal services department, and they represent third parties, i.e. clients who may have some domestic violences. We have a big domestic violence group of people who work on that. We have volunteer lawyers who help us with immigration issues. So we could always use help there. So that's one idea. That's one area. You can contact me through Adam, or you can go on our website and look a little far down, you'll find me. I don't want all, I don't want people suddenly writing, Anyway, I won't get into that. I'm talking not about you all here, because you're volunteers. Love my volunteers. So you can find me on the website. Also, where like Adam and using Adam and his wonderful firm, if you want to work for the center as opposed to doing volunteer work for their clients, then drop me an email. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk to other lawyers who may be interested in doing work for us. There's always work, and I'm happy, to always network and get new attorneys involved. So those are kind of some ideas. So people get confused sometimes that I represent the center, and the center has a lot of legal issues, and that's why I need firms like Adams. But also, if you want to work for clients directly, then we have the legal services clinic. So that's it. Thank you for your support, and you can always donate.
We're going to put up the donation screen in just a moment, because I'm shameless about asking for help for these worthy causes. As we were talking here, I was thinking to myself, I will bet in our audience today and in our follow-on YouTube audience, there's somebody out there who's right now thinking about how they can help and how they can join a nonprofit, and perhaps thinking about how someday they might become a general counsel to a nonprofit like you are. And somebody read my mind and sent in a question. And the question is this: for those considering transitioning to a nonprofit from the private sector, what would you say are the skills most essential to develop in order to immediately add value to the charity? I think it's a fantastic question. I would open it up to all three of you.
Prioritizing and being even-tempered. Can't get all upset and about things coming in the door at you, because you're supposed to be the cool head that prevails. Everybody's going to look at you and go, well, you're the lawyer, what should we do? And you've got to be even about it and get it, think about it, decide what to do. Is it important? Is it less important? And compared to other things? Those are the two skills I would say.
What do you think, Lori?
I would say I agree with Carla completely, and I would add the power of persuasion, because ultimately we're not the decision makers. We're providing advice, and it's really important to bring people along with you and to be a good listener, to be able to take in a wide range of inputs and ideas and comments, and to really help everyone crystallize around the right approach.
That's all very good advice. And I think we see that in the way that you both have operated your legal departments. So let me turn to Cam. What would you say are the most essential skills that you think incoming lawyers should have?
Well, I was looking at the question and taking a different angle, but I'll answer what you just asked. Being a good listener is very important. You have a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different issues that come before you as a general counsel, and you learn a lot of different things. So you got to be a good listener, hear all points of views before making advice, and study the issues just like you would as a lawyer. Now, what I was thinking you were saying, I thought the questioner was asking more like, what can he, she, or they do in order to groom themselves to become general counsel? That's how I interpret it. I would say there, I think, I think litigation is perfect for it, but anyway, we don't have much time, so I won't go off on that. I think just generally litigation's good, corporate's good. You can parlay any one of those two disciplines into a general counsel position. And I'd volunteer, I said this earlier, I volunteered for 10 years as I was the outside general counsel, so to speak. And then I created the position and became the first one, and 10 years ago. But it was because I had all those contacts before and I'd volunteered my time. So volunteering with an organization that you really love, and see if they have a general counsel, and then network. That's all I say.
That's a great point, Cam, that we can all become apprentice general counsel simply by volunteering. We have just a few minutes left, and I have one other excellent set of questions, which I think are very timely. The questions are, what do you think will be your nonprofit's biggest challenges as COVID starts to be well controlled? Has COVID changed people's giving or the amount of the pro bono assistance you've received so far? And has it permanently changed your job at all? So again, I open it up to all three, and we're going to hear from each of you, and then we'll close it out for our program. Thank you.
It's changed my job for the better and my agency. We've gotten more donations, more support pro bono, and it's made my job easier because we've had more support in those two areas.
Lori?
Yeah, we also have had seen our giving increase, and people have been incredibly generous, given the really substantial needs that we've seen at all of our sites. We had to figure out how to buy PPE for our staff, testing kits. Eventually, we need to get everyone vaccinated. It's critical. The world vaccination is a worldwide issue. And all of that costs us more and puts strain on our resources and our staff. So we're grateful that our donors have stepped up, and we see this continuing, unfortunately, but we all have a ways to go.
Cameron?
Yes, our donors have stepped up as well. We had a telethon in lieu of our annual gala, so that was good. We may do another telethon. One thing that we've done very successfully is telemedicine. We stepped in immediately and did that, and that will probably stay. There may have to be some changes in the laws and the regulations to do that, because it was limited before. And then with COVID, there are all these waivers that allowed it to take place. And I think that's a really, really good development, especially in a place like Los Angeles, to allow people to just who become comfortable with telemedicine. So that, I think, is one of the positive things.
Right.
You look for the positive, right, in this horrible situation. But anyway.
Well, I think that's a very good way to end, because out of all the sadness that we've experienced in the last year, I've seen tremendous evidence of charity, hope, kindness, and I think that will continue. I believe that it will. And so I'd like to start by thanking each of our three wonderful panelists, And I want to thank your organizations and all this wonderful staff and volunteers for all that you do. You make the world a better place. And I believe it is the job of the rest of us lawyers, including those who are watching, to do everything we can to help you, to help others. On behalf of the Beverly Hills Bar Association, I want to thank all of you and thank all of our viewers. And we look forward to seeing you again in person. And in the meantime, be well, take care, and continue to do great work. Take care,
Thank you
everyone.
for the platform.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.